Welcome. Thank you for joining Leadership in the Era of Stellar Client-Centered Services. This is Bernadette Landers from Altarum, and along with me, I have my coworkers, Karen Zehe and Jim Wetherell, who are lending their valuable and much appreciated expertise to enable an intriguing and interactive hour-long webinar for you. Today, we are discussing leadership as it relates to client-centered services, and because CCS isn't one thing, but more about how you do everything, this webinar will draw some parallels between the way staff are expected to function within a client-centered services model and the opportunities to lead in this same style. In essence, we can't expect staff to function in one way if the organization doesn't function in the same way. So today, we're going to look at aligning systems for highest and best performance. Oh, I want to make sure and let you know, there is a CEU credit available for today's webinar. You must complete a post-webinar evaluation in order to print your certificate. At the end of this live webinar, we will give you the link. If you are participating as a group, please make sure everyone has a chance to access the post-survey link in case they would like to provide feedback and also for that continuing education certificate. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. And I want to acknowledge right up front, there may be some work to be done in system alignment related to client-centered services and leadership. So I invite you to participate today so we can draw on our collective strength to see where we can make progress. We hope this webinar will provide you an opportunity for exploration and reflection on leadership practices in this modern era of stellar client-centered services. Here is our agenda for our time together, or the topic areas we will be exploring today. We will be looking at some techniques to clarify purpose, align systems, and build trust. We are exploring and discussing these broad topics because leadership within the client-centered services model is more about the big picture and focusing on the end results. Just as CCS empowers staff to use their critical thinking skills and tailor their approach based on the situation, leadership in this era follows the same theory. You have a lot of options for how you go about things and work with your team. You are empowered to apply the most effective technique for the situation, to tailor your approach to lead to stellar performance. I invite you to participate in this webinar. We have a few different methods for you to participate. I recognize some of you might be joining as a group. That's super. And if so, please elect an individual to drive the mouse and keyboard. Pick someone to sit at the helm to provide your cumulative response to polls and type questions or comments into the text box if necessary. The text box is located just below the presentation slides, and it is set up as an anonymous method of participation, meaning questions and comments you type in there are only visible to us on the presentation side of the webinar. So please feel free to use that text box. Karen's going to help me monitor it so that we can respond in a timely fashion to your questions and comments. If you would prefer to be able to talk with us, you will have that opportunity as well. We've reserved the last 10 minutes for Q&A. We will be using some poll questions today also and broadcasting the results to get a feel for where you all are at. And so today we have several attendees from across the state of Michigan, and I appreciate you all joining us. So let's get started with our first poll to kind of get a feel for where the group is at today. Here's the first poll presented to you. It says, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. I am going to invite you to respond to the poll, please. And we have responses coming in. I'm going to pause here for just a moment to allow some additional audience members to respond. It's always fun to get a feel for where our colleagues are at in response to these type of questions. Just a few more seconds, and I'm going to broadcast the results. Okay. And I'm going to broadcast the results to this statement that at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. Here's how your coworkers from across the state responded. And interesting to get a feel for where people are at related to this statement. We have some polls we're going to do in this webinar today. I imagine that as you respond, reflecting on your personal opinion, it's also quite natural to start to speculate on how others in our organization might respond to this same question. This poll to me is really all about, maybe to summarize it briefly, that idea of winning, that there is a great deal of satisfaction in a job well done, being able to do what you do best. This poll question and the others you will have a chance to respond today are examples of questions posed by Gallup in their research of staff engagement. And Gallup would define staff engagement or engaged employees as those who are involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work and contribute to their organization in a positive manner. Gallup found responses to these questions to be an indicator of staff engagement. Let's look at what Gallup found related to staff engagement, and maybe more importantly, the opposite, or disengagement.
Bernadette, this is Karen, and I have a comment for the Q&A. It says, we have staff out there who don't have adequate time to provide nutrition information. That's challenging.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Thanks for sharing that comment. And absolutely, when we talk about maybe some of the challenges and acknowledge those, that there are challenges out there, there's some opportunities to align systems. So reflecting on that statement, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. It's important that we look at aligning systems so staff can do what they're best at. We have highly trained, competent, educated, experienced staff out there, and setting them up for success so they can provide the core value of WIC, nutrition education. Pretty important component of leadership in this modern era of client-centered services. Thank you for that comment. We appreciate participation. Anybody else that would like to put a comment or question into that chat box, please don't hesitate. Okay, so let's take a look at the state of the American workplace. Here are the most current statistics provided by Gallup's State of the Workplace Initiative. This data is collected from more than 195,000 U.S. employees via the Gallup panel and Gallup daily tracking. More than 31 million respondents in Gallup's Q12 client database were compiled to identify these criteria of the state of the American workplace. So let's see what Gallup found. They found under the category of engaged, those being engaged employees work with passion and feel a profound connection to their company. They drive innovation and move the organization forward. Another category of the American workplace was not engaged. Those are employees that are essentially checked out. They're sleepwalking through their workday, putting time but not energy or passion into their work. And then the final category, actively disengaged. These were defined as employees that aren't just unhappy at work, they're busy acting out their unhappiness every day. These workers undermine what their engaged coworkers accomplish. So Gallup found the state of the American workplace that we could categorize employees into each one of these buckets. And I have some percentages to share with you on where people typically fall within an organization. So engaged employees, what percent do you think of the American workplace is engaged? That number came out to be 33%. And not engaged, those essentially checked out, here's what Gallup found, about 51%. And then that final category of actively disengaged, I bet you already did the math, right about 16% are actively disengaged. Not just unhappy at work, but acting out their unhappiness. So as we reflect on these categories of the American workplace, I bet you all are reflecting on where you might fit as far as one of these categories, and also perhaps at different times in your career where you were in one or a different category. So let's look at an analogy for this state of the American workplace if we want to look at it in different terms. If we look at employee engagement, we can think of our organization as a 10-person crew team. If that were the case, statistically speaking, 3 employees are rowing with all their hearts. 5 are just along for the ride, looking at the scenery. And 2 are trying to sink the boat. So related to the common standard of employee engagement, this is what Gallup found to be the most common situation. And there's definitely some real cost to disengagement. The cost of low staff engagement related to turnover, up to 65% more turnover. So the revolving door of the work environment. And I think we all know that there is a significant investment in hiring and training staff. There's a pretty big learning curve to lick, and we invest a lot of time to train staff. So turnover can be a big drawback for disengagement. And then absenteeism. The 37% more absenteeism, and the wear and tear on coworkers who are left at work when their colleague is out. It seems like absenteeism can sometimes actually become contagious. Now on the flip side, engaged staff, 10% better customer rating. So maybe that idea of keeping clients coming back for more, and 21% more productivity, and then profitability, 22% more profitable is how Gallup categorized it. I might say that we could translate that to effectiveness, that with engaged staff, we might have 22% more effectiveness in what we do. So there are a lot of ways to foster engagement and combat disengagement. We're going to explore several of those ways. And one way is to actively check in with staff, to ask for their input and feedback. Let me model that technique and get your input on a poll question. Here's another poll coming your way. It says, I know what is expected of me at work. And we have responses coming in. I'm going to pause here for just a little bit longer. While I'm pausing and waiting for those responses, I want to acknowledge a comment in the chat box. And one of our attendees mentioned that they can honestly say they're an engaged worker. And how cool is that? That's wonderful. Nice to hear that there's engaged people out there passionate about what they do. Okay, Okay, a few more responses are coming in. I'm going to give it just a few more seconds here and then share these results. And here you go to the question, I know what is expected of me at work. We have a lot of agreement amongst us with that statement. So a lot of people pretty clear on what is expected of them at work. Good news, great to hear. And I wonder about the rest of your team and how they might respond to this question as well. Because clear understanding of expectations allows for meeting those expectations and quality performance. Let's take a look at some of the support of that philosophy that comes from a different field. So this is based on Captain Mike Avershoff in the U.S. Navy, and some of his lessons learned around leadership, particularly leading to stellar performance. So when a new captain takes command of a ship in the U.S. Navy, a ceremony is held. Dignitaries arrive, the crew rolls out a red carpet. In short, it's a very big deal. But when Mike Avershoff arrived for the change of command ceremony, in which he would become captain of the USS Benefold, he couldn't believe what he saw. In a less than respectful send-off for his predecessor, the crew cheered. He immediately decided that while his crew may never come to like him, he had to earn their trust, so at least they could respect him. When Mike Avershoff took command of the USS Benefold, morale was low, turnover was high, and performance ranked at the bottom of the Pacific Fleet. 12 months later, the ship was the benchmark for performance, the shining star of the Pacific Fleet, using the very same crew. Retention went from 28% to almost 100%. All Captain Avershoff's sailors, or the vast majority, were re-upping to stay on his ship. Mike Avershoff facilitated this amazing transition by making sure he communicated to his crew, it's your ship. You own it just as much as I do. So for him, empowering means defining the parameters in which people are allowed to operate and then setting them free. A core component of this framework is trust. The thing that is tricky about trust is you have to earn it, and you earn trust only by giving it. Defining of parameters is an extension of that trust, and it's central to client-centered services because we are shifting away from the standardized process or cookie-cutter approach and instead adapting our approach to best serve the client. We are recognizing it is not as simple as checking a box, but much more complex and subjective. So it becomes even more important to define the parameters of performance and ensure that tools used to measure performance are consistent with expectations. The approach we take with staff needs to mirror the expected approach with clients. Let's take a look at one area in which and some opportunities for us to maybe clarify purpose, align systems, and build trust. So looking at certification, let's define some parameters related to certification. There's a lot to get done in a certification and a lot of priorities on staff time. It's all important, but if everything is important, then sometimes nothing is. So from that perspective, perhaps we want to clarify for staff the purpose of certification. Maybe one way to define the purpose of certification is that it's all about supporting positive health behaviors. From this standpoint, staff can be empowered to use their time in assessment to identify participants' interests, to see what is going well, to find opportunities to share information. That certification is not only about assessment, but that assessment is the means to an end. Alignment of systems is a look at the tools used in certification. I know Michigan WIC is looking at one of your main tools, your MIS system, your MyWIC, and ensuring that this tool is supporting staff and meeting your needs. Another tool of quality certification is how we evaluate performance. So there's a chance to look at the process of the management and evaluation and ensure this tool for performance is consistent with the desired performance you're looking for. Because what gets measured gets focused on. And finally, this leads to how to build trust. Collaboration is one way to certainly build trust. In this era of client-centered services, it's all about collaboration. Engaging WIC staff in initiatives, getting their opinions across all levels of WIC staff, coming to the table to work together on how to align systems, because we're all in it together. And it's modeling collaboration that we are all on the same team, so staff can have that approach and style when they're working with clients, so that they can partner with clients around the behavior change opportunities they want to engage in. Okay, so looking at aligning systems, let's do another poll to see what additional opportunities we might have to foster stellar performance. Here's a poll for you, and this one says, in the last 7 days, I have received recognition or praise for doing good work. I'm going to pause for a few moments here and let people respond. And lots of responses coming in. I'm going to give it just a bit more time so we can make sure everyone has a chance to respond to the poll. In the last 7 days, I've received recognition or praise for doing good work. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and broadcast the results here. And responses from your colleagues across the state. Looks like they're pretty dispersed, not all in one area, and not unusual. Based on what we heard from our Gallup statistics and what creates the state of the American workplace, that receiving recognition or praise leads to engaged employees, and sometimes there's an opportunity to strengthen this component of what's taking place in the workplace. Appreciation comes in many forms. A simple thank you goes a long way. We had this same webinar topic earlier today, and one of our attendees shared that in response to this question, although they don't feel that they receive a whole lot of appreciation from their direct supervisor, that actually inspires them to make sure they are providing that appreciation and recognition to the staff that work for them. So pretty interesting how we have that opportunity to recognize something that maybe isn't going so well for us, but we can be the buffer so it's even better for others. Here's a quote for you. The deepest principle of human nature is the craving to be appreciated. Mike Abershoff, the captain of the USS Benefold, one technique he used was to actively look for sailors who were doing great work and thank them for their effort. One way of doing that was by awarding them a Navy Achievement Medal. Captain Abershoff walked around with medals in his pocket, and when he came across a sailor doing something great, he would award them a medal on the spot and thank them for their hard work and dedication. These medals were important because sailors got one bonus point on their advancement exam for having one. He was allowed, technically, to give out 15 medals each year, but he wasn't sure anyone was really paying attention to how many he distributed. In his first year, he handed out 115 medals, and he said you could see the morale on the ship start to shift. For the first time, someone wasn't walking around looking to chew them out, but to praise and thank them for doing a good job. The change got people's attention. One more example of how to show appreciation from Captain Abershaw. This one has a bit of a twist. He ordered a big supply of greeting cards that read, "The officers and crew of the USS Benefold wish you a happy birthday." Each month, he would get a birthday list of sailors' spouses. He would fill out the cards by writing, "Dear," fill in the blank, the individual's first name, like, "Dear Marie," and would have the happy birthday greeting, and at the bottom he would sign, "Love Mike." The extra touch was he would always include a postscript. The PS said, "Your husband is doing a great job," or "Your wife is doing a great job." Mike included the postscript even if they weren't exactly doing a great job at the time. So meeting that craving of human nature to be appreciated, and what a cool technique to send a birthday card to the spouse and tell them just how much they appreciate the sailor on his ship. Showing appreciation is certainly a way to foster staff engagement. Appreciation builds motivation for behaviors. It helps change people's vision of themselves, empowering them to grow. It lets people take risks or try new things. One more reason showing appreciation is so important: lack of appreciation is consistently ranked at the top of the reasons why people quit their jobs. So showing appreciation is in a perfect alignment with client-centered services, where affirmations are a core tool of the trade. Let's do another poll and check in with the group on this question. So this one says, "My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person."
And while people are doing that poll, we have a comment in the chat box, and this person says, "I might have not received praise from my director, but my clients give me praise all the time. They don't want me to retire." A great praise.
That's awesome, definitely. That's great. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. How rewarding I can imagine that must be to get that feedback on a job well done from the individual that you're striving to serve with excellence. Thank you for sharing that. And one more example I would say of how we pay it forward, that attitude is contagious, and the way we work with others can definitely be reciprocal, that we get those feel good as well. Okay, poll responses are coming in, so I'm going to broadcast the results shortly here. This one is to "My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person." Let's see where the group stands. And so we have a variety of responses here, quite a few responses on the agreement end. And then we want to acknowledge that there is some disagreement out there, that this might not be the case for everyone. We probably have, over the course of our career, had a few different experiences in this regard, related to this, it feels like someone cares about me as a person. So focusing on supporting the whole person with the people we work with can have a profound impact on how people feel about their work. I'm going to switch back to the webinar for you here. And I want to share with you that showing people you care about them can come in a lot of different ways. And Mike Abershoff, one of his techniques, the captain of the Benefold, one of the techniques he demonstrates that he cared about people was he learned the first name of every crew member on his ship, all 310 of them. He also took the time to listen to them. Early in his time on Benefold, he took the time to interview every crew member so he could understand what their professional goals were and what support he could offer them to achieve their personal goals. Mike Abershoff interviewed all of them with several questions to figure out where people are coming from and what their highest and best purpose could be. These questions that we're using in the polls for you today, they come directly from that Gallup research around staff engagement, and they're available for you if you would like to use them with your team. In that download pod under resources, the questions used in this poll are there for you if you want to use them with your staff. In addition to that, there's some books that are potential resources for you. One of which that is listed is Mike Abershoff's book, It's Your Ship, his book on leadership. Okay, let's do one more poll. And this poll says, at work, my opinion seems to count. Okay, we have responses coming in. I'm going to pause for just a few additional seconds and let people respond. So at work, my opinion seems to count. I'm going to broadcast the results so we can see where we stand. And a bit of variety here. For at work, my opinion seems to count. And an important opportunity to help people feel that their opinion does count, because it certainly leads to staff engagement. Let's look at one of the techniques that we can utilize to help people feel valued. And this is around attitudes. The attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? Great leaders have one thing in common. They know that a positive attitude is contagious. Are you that person with a positive attitude and enthusiasm that is felt by everyone you come in contact with? The difference between success and failure isn't tied to how you look, how you dress, or how much education you have. It's based on how you think. In other words, do you see the glass half empty or half full? It's all about attitude, your mental state, or the position you choose to take. And the truth of the matter is that every day we have the choice to display a positive or negative attitude. On a daily basis, we encounter negative attitudes at work and in our personal lives as well. If you remain positive in the midst of negativity, you are the one that can be contagious. Your attitude not only impacts the team you work with, but it pays it forward to all the clients they see. Consider what your attitude is communicating to staff and therefore being passed along to clients. Is your attitude one of abundance, where you can share power and authority with your team? An attitude where there is an abundance of important roles in WIC, and everybody's role is important and is valuable to the WIC clients we serve? Is your attitude one of possibility, where everything might not be perfect today, but there is a possibility for improvement tomorrow? Do you cultivate an attitude of enthusiasm for the possibilities? And is your attitude one of collaboration, where it will take local, state, and federal WIC staff working together to get all these systems in alignment? Is your attitude fostering collaboration by not placing blame, but instead looking for opportunities to work together? Speaking of working together, our last poll question for you to respond to. This one says, I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right. Okay, responses are coming into this question. I'm going to pause here for a moment. I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right. So one of the poll questions on the Gallup poll that's an indicator of engagement or disengagement. I'm going to broadcast the results so you all can see where you and your colleagues are across the state. So a bit of variety here, some strong agreement, maybe a bit of disagreement. Certainly different perspectives on material and equipment needed to do my job right. In just a bit, we are going to move on to our Q&A portion of our webinar. In preparation for that, I have a few more slides before we get there, but in preparation for that, I want to mention you have the opportunity to chat with us on the phone if you would like. And in order to unmute your line, what you're going to utilize is *6 to unmute and be able to speak. I'll remind you of that again as we get to the Q&A, but I wanted to share that now because we do have a bit of disagreement related to materials and equipment that we need to do my work right. And I want to share the philosophy of abundance that through our collective strength, we could identify some potential ways and resources. And if you would like to prepare to chat about that during the Q&A, chat about what materials and equipment you do need to do your work right, it would be a nice opportunity for us to brainstorm collectively. Okay. Okay. So materials, okay, the resources available to you that to do your job right, and some of the support that is available to you right now, I just want to briefly share, and you all are joining us for this first webinar in the 2018 Client-Centered Services webinar series, so you all are aware of these webinars. I want to take this opportunity to share that there are additional webinars coming up that might be useful to both yourself and others on your team. So this one is the first in our series, Leadership. The next one coming up is on continuity of care and why it takes a team. That webinar will be available on September 20th. The audience that we are envisioning is all staff. And the intent of the webinar is to focus on the important role all team members play in their distinct role in order to provide quality WIC services. We also have conducting a client-centered assessment webinar. That's going to be on October 2nd with the audience of CPAs. And that webinar is about discussing the expectations of performance in assessment and defining those parameters of expected performance. Recognizing that there's not one right way and there's a lot to be done in assessment, that's what that webinar is about. And then excellence in service with the intended audience of kind of front of the house, clerical and tech staff. And that will be looking at some techniques and practices to make the WIC office and interactions with clients warm and friendly, basically to create a place that clients want to come back to. And then on November 1st, it's going to be the webinar on care plans. That webinar is going to strive to collectively define best practices in high-risk care plans, look at what's going well currently, and perhaps what adjustments could be made. The audience for that care planning webinar is registered dietitians. And then rounding out the webinar series, we started with a leadership webinar, and we're going to close with a leadership webinar. That's going to be on November 15th. And looking at additional leadership concepts and how you might apply them as you see fit to the client-centered services model of modern practice in WIC. So I mentioned that as a potential support system for best practice, and I want to share an additional opportunity that's available to you all. So this opportunity is around in-clinic coaching and mentoring. So we have John Wooden, his book up here, because John Wooden believed that everybody functioned as a mentor to some degree. And in his opinion, the word mentor is both a verb and a noun. It is simultaneously something you do and something you are. So some techniques to support staff performance live in clinic. And I would like to make available to you all, if you are interested, that opportunity for some mentoring. That I would be happy to join you out in clinic and provide some direct coaching to staff around client-centered services live with clients, because client-centered services is subjective and about choices in the moment based on what we think will work best with clients. So there's a lot of choices that staff have to make in one certification appointment, and having somebody, a supportive individual, to have a brief discussion and provide some feedback after that session is really effective. I had the opportunity to be out in Michigan last month and visit a few different clinics to engage in this activity of coaching with staff, and one of the coordinators shared with me how much she values the opportunity for staff to get some feedback and coaching live in clinic, and how difficult it can be for her to carve out the time to get that done. So in the interest of providing the support network for you all, if coaching is something you and your team would like to take advantage of, please reach out to me. My email address is on the screen here, and you probably have also received notifications from me via email. I think you probably got a reminder for this webinar that had my email address on it, if not several other emails from me recently. Okay, so that's an opportunity for you that I wanted to share. And let's take it to Q&A. So if you would like to pose a question verbally, you can use *6 to unmute, and we'll do some discussion. I would like to hear from you, or use the text box if you prefer. And while we are waiting for people to unmute, I'm going to point out one more item that's available to you in the download box. And in addition to your resources page, which does include the poll question viewed today and a list of potential readings, the next item is a flyer, the WIC CCS flyer that comes from the state of Michigan. On the bottom of that flyer, there is the link to where you can register, or where you can help others on your team register for webinars or review other training materials. You also have the slide presentations, the PowerPoint presentation slides from today, if you would like to download those.
And Bernadette, we have a question here for you. What does coaching entail? Who will you be working with?
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. I appreciate that question. That's an excellent question, because it's not one standard practice. It's based on the need of you and your staff and what people would like support in. Typically, coaching is with CPAs, RVs, high-risk counseling or certification appointments, it's about the opportunity for me to sit in and do some observation of the appointment and have a discussion with the staff afterward in the same style as we hope they will work with clients, meaning that discussion will hopefully demonstrate the client-centered services skills that we use to evoke motivation and facilitate behavior change with clients. That's the same type of style I'll strive to use with staff, so that not only am I supporting them in their growth and development, but I'm modeling these practices that I believe to be effective, so they can, the same style, it's a mirrored approach. That's what coaching entails. Last month I did work with coordinators as well who maybe felt a bit rusty in their provision of client-centered services and wanted to see some clients with me. Great opportunity for that as well. And typically I'm out in clinic, depending on the size of your staff, for about a half day, if that provides adequate opportunity to work with everybody. But depending on scheduling and demand, that's what it all depends on. I'm working with the state office directly to honor your request for support in the framework of coaching.
And this next question says, Bernadette, in your opinion, what's the most important leadership skill?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, okay. Let's toss out those challenging ones. In my opinion, what is the most important leadership skill? I'm going to go with situational leadership. That the most important leadership skill is about adaptation to what's needed in the moment. Meaning, sometimes we want to lead from a directive approach. If we have that eager new hire wanting to fully engaged and wanting to learn, we want to be fairly directive and help establish those parameters of performance. But sometimes I have leaders ask me, but what about that staff person who's resistant to CCS? What do I do about them? Well, that takes a pretty different leadership style, in that we want to identify what is causing the resistance and celebrate successes to hopefully get them on board and clarify expectations. It's a different management approach. I'm going to go with situational leadership as one of the most important leadership styles, because that gives me the out that it's all about adjusting based on the need. I'm going to open that same question up to the rest of the audience. Anybody want to jump on in, use *6 to unmute, and tell us their opinion of the most important leadership style within client-centered services?
One person wrote trust, exclamation point.
Absolutely. And a delicate, trust is so important, such a core value system, and it really does need to be extended in order to gain trust. So communicating in different ways that we trust people to, in our words and our actions and our policies and our styles, absolutely.
There's a similar question here, but it says, do you have suggestions or tips to help employees who are actively disengaged? What have other managers tried and found successful?
Ooh, excellent question. Suggestions or tips? And so what have other, I'm going to open this up to the group. What have other managers tried and found successful for those employees that are actively disengaged?
And one person wrote for the skills, important skills, free of judgment. Exclamation point.
Yeah, huge. Such an important skill, and sometimes there's some disconnects within the system that kind of sets us up in that role of judgment. Acknowledging that and resisting communicating that judgment in leadership, and it models CCS with our clients, what we're doing with clients, that we want to be free of judgment so people can feel confident and feel good about what they're doing. And I hear another comment here, and this comment is about listening. And I'm not 100% sure which topic area it applies to, but I'm going to take a leap of faith and say that maybe this comment around listening is in response to that question, what have other managers tried and found successful? Listening, in Mike Avershoff's book around how he turned the benefold around, listening is one of his core skills, and he phrased it as listening aggressively, so that you can absolutely hear where people are coming from and determine what their barriers might be, what's causing them to be disengaged, so you can tailor your approach to their needs. Because there's a lot of different things. We shared 6 poll questions related to Gallup and what leads to engagement or disengagement. That's only half. That's half of what Gallup typically uses. And to get at all the different areas that cause staff to be engaged or disengaged, that it's about identifying what their issue is. There's a lot of different things that might be causing that. And listening certainly helps. Let's see, we have another comment here, and this one says, actively disengaged, ask them how they think they are being perceived by their coworkers, and if they want to work to change it. Ooh, interesting. So explore with them what they think their coworkers, how their coworkers perceive them. Yeah, absolutely. And if they want to change it. Great tip. Okay, and I am going to provide the opportunity for last-minute comments and questions in the chat box, and also for anybody that wants to be really brave and hit *6 and share something verbally with us. Now is your time, because I am sharing a big thank you for your participation, and I'm also sharing the link to start the evaluation. So when you click this link, you will have the post survey related to this webinar, and we appreciate your feedback. We're always working to improve our webinars for you, so your feedback there is much appreciated. And the final page of that survey, it's brief, but at the end of the survey there is a chance for you to ask for your CEU, so your certificate for attendance. And if anyone has any difficulty or challenges with obtaining that certificate, I don't think you will. But for anything you might need at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, this is Bernadette. And we're going to leave this final screen up for you because it says thank you for your participation and attendance, and we do appreciate you joining us today. And for the good of the group, going once, going twice, other comments or questions? Okay, thank you all so much. I appreciate you being with me for today. Please utilize that link to start the evaluation, and have a great rest of your day. Keep up the good work and striving for excellence in client-centered services. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.